One of these is Lewis's argument from desire, which sounds like a very silly argument on the face of it. He essentially says something along the lines of, look, everybody seems to have an innate desire for something a bit beyond the natural, something a bit supernatural, something, beauty, purpose, this kind of intangible stuff. And he says, I actually wrote down the way he puts it in Mere Christianity. He says most people, if they had really learned to look into their own hearts, would know that they do want, and want acutely, something that cannot be had in this world. There are all sorts of things in this world that offer to give it to them, that offer to give it to you, but never quite keep their promise. And then later, if I find in myself a desire which no experience in this world can satisfy, the most probable explanation is that I was made for another world. And like I say, on the face of it, that sounds maybe a little bit silly. But there is a serious question in here that most of the time when we evolve a desire for something, we evolve a desire for food, for warmth, this kind of thing. The reason for that is because this desire gives us reason to seek out those things in the real world. If there were no food and digestion, if there were no temperature, it would make no sense for us to evolve a desire for food, for temperature, for warmth. Yeah, that wouldn't make any sense. Why would that even evolve in the first place if it doesn't actually latch on to anything in the real world? And although I'm not sure if Lewis was aware of this, we know anthropologically that almost everywhere we look in the world, we find people with religious sensibilities. They have some kind of either desire or apprehension of something beyond themselves, something divine. And I suppose the question Lewis asks is, from an evolutionary perspective, why would it be that we would universally evolve that desire if that desire doesn't actually latch onto anything in reality?
I find it a very odd argument. Because we have a desire to survive and live, which makes perfect evolutionary sense, it's a natural projection of that desire that we might desire to go on living after we die. A desire for eternal life. You could easily see that as just an extension of the perfectly Darwinian desire to go on living. I think it's just another example of that. That particular part of it is, I suppose. What else did he say? The desire for something beyond.
He says, want acutely something that cannot be had in this world. He says a lot more about it in Mere Christianity, but he says, if I find it myself in a desire which no experience in this world can satisfy, the most probable explanation is that I was made for another world.
Yes, the idea that because you want something, therefore it must be true, I find that a most extraordinary idea.
It does seem strange to want something that doesn't exist.
Why?
Because if we're trying to give an account of where this desire comes from, it seems to have to latch onto something. And it seems like what you're suggesting is that what it's latching onto is just the general desire to stay alive as long as possible.
Well, that I was thinking specifically of the desire for eternal life.
Sure.
But I think you can do a kind of version of that for whatever else C.S. Lewis was saying. Some people may have a sexual desire for a film star that they're never going to meet and wouldn't look at them if they did, and that doesn't mean that there's anything realistic about it. It's a natural extension of sexual desire.
But of course, the film star exists.
Well, it doesn't exist as in any realistic sense as far as this wretched person is concerned.
Sure.
You could talk about a desire for 72 virgins in Islamic heaven. That doesn't exist, but it's easy to see it as a projection of an ordinary biological desire.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. Maybe if not in the detail, with the suggestion that the desire can be for something real, and that the image of God or afterlife or eternality are just sort of warped or extended versions of a real thing. That is, the afterlife is an extension of the desire to be alive.
A physicist might desire a solution to the theory of everything and the unification of gravity and quantum theory.
Yeah, that's what C.S. Lewis says. They desire God.
you desire a solution to a physical problem which may be insoluble.
I'm pulling your leg.
It may be out of this world in the sense that it's beyond solution. C.S. Lewis better come up with a better argument than that.
Well, C.S. Lewis has another argument for you, which is the argument from reason, and I actually want to give you a version of it that is more modern, that I'm sure you'll have talked about before, which is Alvin Plantinga's evolutionary argument against naturalism. I want to know what you think about this because, I'm sat with one of the most preeminent evolutionary biologists in living memory, and I would love to know what you think about this. Now, Plantinga points out that if we're a materialist, if we don't believe in the existence of a mind governing all of this, and everything evolves according to natural selection, well, what does natural selection select for? Survivability. Therefore, everything which evolves because it helps us to survive, including our minds, including our rationality. And so, why is it that we believe that evolution occurred by natural selection? Because we look at the evidence, and we use our rationality to come to the conclusion that natural selection is the best explanation. But what we're doing in assenting to the truth of natural selection is saying that the mechanism we use to believe in natural selection doesn't actually select for truth. It selects for survivability. We can't know that 2 + 2 = 4 is true, or if it's just that believing 2 + 2 = 4 is beneficial for our survival. If the latter's the case, then we run into a lot of trouble. And it seems that when we say evolution is true, therefore our brain evolved for survivability, we've just undermined the truth aptness of the very process that we've used to believe in evolution.
Yeah, I've never understood why people are at all persuaded by this. If any animal went through life, particularly humans, went through life believing the equivalent of 2 + 2 doesn't equal 4, we would survive. I mean, if you base your life upon evidence, if you base your life upon rationality, you're more likely to survive than if you base your life upon nonsense. And it just seems to me to be so easy to say that rationality and the search for truth, the search for evidence is a good way to live, even from a mundane Darwinian point of view.
When you say a moment ago, if we were to live as if 2 + 2 didn't equal 4, I suppose what I'm saying is we have no way to ascertain whether it's actually true. I mean, you can. Are you saying something like, if the thing that we thought was true was not actually true, we just wouldn't be able to survive? Or something like that?
Yes.
Is it not conceivable that there could be things that we believe that are not true, but by believing them to be true actually make us more likely?
Oh, yes. That's I mean, there is some evidence for that. There's some evidence that having a somewhat inflated belief in your own ability is beneficial.
Right.
So there is evidence that people in general think they're better looking than they are, think they're cleverer than they are, think they're better drivers than they are, etc. And there could be a certain one at least could make an interesting case that self-deception of this kind. Robert Trivers, one of the great figures in my field, even wrote a book called The Folly of Fools about self-deception and the Darwinian advantage of self-deception. I think it's got to be pretty limited. I mean, it would be a little bit of an icing, a little bit of a gloss on top of a fundamentally rational.
Well, I think that's the point that someone like Plantinga might wish to push back on, which is to say, how can we know that in some instances, sure, believing something that's actually false is beneficial for our survival, and so we've evolved like a mechanism to just naturally think that it's true. But that definitely doesn't happen when we do math. So that definitely doesn't happen when we're sort of doing empirical observation about, the shape and size of things. We know that doesn't happen. Well, how do we know that?
Well, we know that science works. I mean, we know that if you follow scientific principles, you can get to Pluto. And it works over and over and over again. You cure smallpox. You slingshot rockets around Venus and Earth and get to Jupiter. All this works, and scientific predictions come out right. You can predict when eclipses will occur. It works.
I suppose the analogy there would be somebody would ask, well, then how do you know that 2 + 2 = 4 in the abstract mathematical realm is just true, rather than it being the case that thinking or acting as if 2 + 2 = 4 helps us get to the moon?
I think 2 + 2 = 4 is a different matter from getting to the moon. I mean, that's just logic.
Well, I suppose, mathematical truth and logic in general.
Yes.
I'm using 2 + 2 as a representative of that. Yeah.
Yes. I don't see the problem with that. I mean,
well, maybe there is then. Maybe there is. I just wanted to get your thoughts, and I suppose I'll be interested to see what people make of your reply. If you liked that clip, then you will love the full conversation with Richard Dawkins, which you can watch by clicking just here. Go on.